Hi everyone. So in yesterday's video, we were having a look at how the integration of the shadow world takes place, how it works in the personality of any given person, whether you're an INFJ personality, whether you're an INTJ personality, whether you're an ESFP personality, whether you're an ISFJ personality. You have shadow functions, okay? What's in your shadow is more than just the shadow functions. You need to always remember to think in terms of nuance, to think in terms of layers. There's always layers, and there's always more layers than you think. So, okay, there are shadow functions, we can accept that. These shadow functions are part of the shadow in the unconscious. That is to say, part of the personal unconscious that is closer to the frontier with the collective unconscious, deep unconscious, okay, deep personal unconscious, not the shallow personal unconscious, which is what we call the subconscious. If you get a handle on these terms, that will help a lot. I'm thinking actually, so someone from my Patreon supporter base mentioned today in fact, that it might be useful in my next book if I added a glossary of terms at the end. So this is something that I probably will do because it would be of help. You know, my book on NI is basically turning out to be, yes, a book on NI, but also more than just a book on NI. It explores a lot of the stuff that I'm discussing here that clearly is I don't want to call it a model, but a sort of narrative framework where you can understand and analyze all of the types, which is also why I have started this consultation service where you can get in touch with me to be typed, or to explore your type in more depth, or get a second opinion, or whatever you want to do in regard to your type understanding. You can consult with me, regardless of whether you're an INFJ, an INTJ, or another type. Okay, all types are welcome. That's because I have managed in my book and now in these videos to articulate just this new depth psychology of personality, which we could also call deep typology. Okay, deep typology because it is typology informed by depth psychology in a Jungian way and psychoanalysis. No other platform does this. So if you're interested, you know how to reach me. It's like my name, renaud.contini@gmail.com. Let me also mention that I have a Patreon page, since I mentioned the Patreon. And I have a Patreon page is linked below. It is the way that you can support my channel to keep me going, to help me keep going with these videos. It's not easy times. I need your support more than ever, and there's a number of you that have already made that decision, and I thank you so much. For those who haven't yet, please consider it. In return, you get access to a whole library of deep dives, updated every 2 weeks with more content, a lot of exclusive content. If you can't have enough of my content, you can access these long format videos, 20 minutes to 30 minutes, on a topic of your choice. Typically, recently we did NI and mysticism, and NI magic. What would an NI dystopia look like? But we also looked at other types, INFPs and so on. So there's lots of material there, and the patrons are loving it. So please consider supporting me. It's not expensive, and the link is below. So my patron was recommending this glossary, and I think I will do it because, again, you need to have a handle on what subconscious means, you know, the superficial layer of the unconscious. Subconscious is a synonym of preconscious, for example. The deeper layers of the unconscious, that is to say the personal unconscious, are close to the collective unconscious, which is even deeper. The border between the collective unconscious and the personal unconscious, the frontier, is stitched by the symbol, which is itself an archetype, which I call the archetype of the personality, itself filled up with a core fundamental fantasy, repair, for example, in the case of the NI dominant. The shadow of your personality is an area of your personal unconscious that is quite close to the frontier because it's very repressed, and because it is therefore in the deep personal unconscious. That's where the shadow functions are. Now, in order to integrate these functions as part of your journey of individuation, yes, the first stage is always self-acceptance. That is the acceptance of your own shadow functions. My INFJ, do I appreciate FI for what it is? When I talk about FI, can I see its value? Can I see the value of NE? Can I see the value of SI? Can I see the value of T? When I talk about my valuing, am I sincere, or am I trying to look good, or am I trying to look accepting? Self-acceptance is really important, and it has to be genuine, which is why it's usually not a process that happens overnight. Only afterwards can you move gradually toward the possibility of mobilizing these functions. What I think, and perhaps this is the crux of this video, is that we never mobilize these functions just by ourselves in everyday life, because that would just clash with our normal use of FE, NI, TI, and so forth. We can't use those simultaneously, okay? We're not schizophrenic in that way. Now, what we do, however, and I think that now I have this, I genuinely believe this now, is that when we, if you like, individuation and this integration of the shadow, including the shadow functions, what it does is that it really, it pushes empathy to whole new levels, whole new qualitative levels, so that a person who is really integrated, imagine that I'm really integrated. I'm not saying I am, but just for the sake of example, highly individuated, highly spiritualized, and dominant in my case. When I empathize with an INFP, okay, who has no functions in common with me, am I empathizing by projecting myself into them? That is to say that what they say and how they behave is always selectively reinterpreted by me in terms of my main functions. And so in a sense, a denaturing and a disfiguring of how they themselves speak, of their voice, okay? Now, it's still empathy if you're making that effort. Some people don't make it to translate. But there's a higher stage of empathy where you can actually begin to appreciate and think like they do when you are with them. So they express a thought, or they express a belief, or they express an emotion, for example. I think that when your shadow is highly integrated, you can muster those shadow functions to empathically relate to people who don't have your functions. It's always interpersonal. Whether you are in the first place an interpersonal F user or less interpersonal FI user, okay? So if I'm with an INFP, I can think, feel like an INFP. I can put myself in their shoes rather than, well, one second, I'm gonna put it differently. I can put them in my shoes and wear those shoes, you know? So I don't project myself into them, I introject them into myself. And the reverberation that takes place is facilitated by the fact that those shadow functions are integrated now. So I can actually use them, I can mobilize them. But at that moment, my purpose is not to express my own individuality, my own personality. I'm empathizing, I'm resonating, I'm reverberating with the person. So it is an empathic mobilization of shadow functions when you are in the presence of people who have those functions. And they are activated then. And that's the highest level of both cognitive, emotional, and psychological empathy. The highest stage of empathy is how I would describe it. I would love to know your thoughts on that, because perhaps you will agree, perhaps you won't agree. What are your own views? Don't forget, guys, to finish that I have written 2 books on a beautiful personality called the INFJ, right? These 2 books are here. The Ecstatic Soul is a book that is called a new look at the INFJ personality, and it's all about the inner world of the INFJ. No book has gone deeper. You should definitely check the link below to hear more about it. And the Infinite Soul, INFJ Life in Modern World, which is all about, it's the sequel, and it's all about the outer world of the INFJ. Often the outer world is seen as hostile by INFJs, and this book explores questions of meaning, value, and purpose, and much more. Check the link below to know more. These books are pretty essential reading if you want a deep understanding of this personality type. Thank you so much, guys, and see you tomorrow.